Okay, welcome to the next episode of Camping with the Pups. We've had a rough road up to this point. As some of you have been following along, you know that we've had 2 months on the road. We got back, had to take care of the house, get everything back in order, and then we were out last Sunday when we were supposed to broadcast this because of a power outage. We had a storm surge and that caused a bit of an issue. So with that, as you saw in the post, we lost internet. We've also lost AC. We still don't have AC, so it's a little warm in here, but we'll do the best we can. With that, we wanted to talk this week about planning for a long trip. There's a lot of lessons we learned while we were gone on our 2 month trip. Part of it is proper planning and getting ready before you go on there. So, what were some of the things that you wish we had looked at before we hit the road?
I guess, probably realistically, the amount of clothing we really were going to need.
Mm-hmm.
It's hit or miss on what exactly you're going to need, but that's a big part of it. Trying to find space for everything that we were going to bring, trying to arrange the overhead loft area, so things like that, and then all the extra stuff that we picked up along the way.
Yeah. So that's one of the areas we're going to talk about with our planning. A couple things we're going to talk about in this episode is make sure your vehicle's ready, both your motorhome. You have the motorhome itself, the engine side of things, as well as if you have a tow vehicle. Of course, if you're pulling travel trailer or fifth wheel, it would be your primary vehicle that you use to tow on there. Also, planning your trip route. There's some discussion on that. Packing properly, which you were just talking about. Prepping the house before you leave so that you don't have mega surprises when you come back. And then what to do on travel day. And we have a tip at the end on things we do to make travel day itself a little smoother. So stay tuned till the end for that. We've kind of found our own little niche, if you will, of how to get things going smoothly the day you travel, because there's a lot going on when you're ready to travel.
Well, you would think after 2 months that we would figure something out.
Yeah. So with that, let's first talk with prepping the vehicle. So a lot of things come with planning ahead of time. So you want to make sure whatever vehicle you're using, whether you're towing a fifth wheel or travel trailer and that's your main vehicle, or it's a motorhome, Class A or Class C like we have, you want to take care of all your maintenance and stuff before you hit a road on a long trip, because it's much easier and much less expensive to deal with before you're on the road than have something happen while you're on the road and have to try to get it into a shop or something to get even routine maintenance. So all your normal stuff that you have with any vehicle, do your oil change, tune up, check out the mechanics of it. If there's fluids that need to be changed out, you have your regular schedule for your vehicle on there. A big one with motorhomes and trailers is check your tires. Your tires are your lifeline. We had checked ours when we left, but stuff happens too. We had a blowout while we were on the road. Luckily, everyone was safe, but it did some damage. And we had actually everything else though went well. We did have a previous trip where we had a coil that goes with the cylinders go out, and that put us on the side of the road for overnight until we get a mechanic. So the more stuff you can check ahead of time, the better on that.
One of the things that we learned due to the blowout was that your tires need to be changed out minimally every 3 years.
Yeah, whether they look good or not.
Yeah, because that was the thing. We found out that our tires were 6 years old. So
Even though we've only had the RV for 3 years, so
yeah, so they're 6 years old. So one of the things, once we get the house back to being settled and get all that taken care of, the next thing on the agenda is definitely going to be
Yeah.
taking it in and getting the other tires changed out.
and don't assume. You can go online, and I may do a video later of how to check the tires for age and all that stuff. But there's stuff online as well. But it's not just well, it can't be that old because my RV is a 22. Ours is a 2020. It's 2024, but the tires on it were 6 years old. So
Yeah.
so they don't always put brand new RVs or tires on there. So
Yeah, make sure that you're checking the date on the tires. If you aren't familiar with that, learn YouTube, learn Google, whatever, figure out the age of the tires so that you know that you're getting the most recent
and maybe
newer tires.
well, I got a lot of stuff coming up here, but maybe as we're doing our maintenance section at the end of the season, I'll do a video on the tires too, on what you can check there. But in the meantime, there's stuff out there just on regular tires because you read them the same way you read your car tires or truck tires. So you can search there. Also, if you have it in your travel trailer or your RV, some of them on the rear axle or some of the axles have airbags. That gives a little bit better drive if they're at the right pressure, because what happens is you get a lot of weight in the RV. As long as you aren't overweight, you want to make sure you never overload, but you can add air to the airbags that gives it more suspension, and that helps some with the drive and stuff like that. So you would adjust that after you're loaded on there, but you can make sure those are working. Also, gas up before you load up. Make sure your propane's there, especially if you're a motorhome, because motorhomes, you have a onboard tank. So not every place that sells propanes, most of the truck stop stuff. I wouldn't tell you how many times we stopped at a particular truck stop along the way because we had a loyalty card with them. And their propane is, we don't have the person that's certified for the propane on duty the whole way down.
That's been a lot of fun because sometimes when you go to the RV site, some RV sites do have propane fill-ups and then some don't. And then you got to figure out where you're going to be.
And if you're a motorhome, if you get to your campsite, set up campsite, which often it tends to work with us if we get there after hours, because we aren't planning to be after hours, but traffic happens, and we'll talk about that a little later in route planning. But you set up camp for the night, you're going to be there a week, you've already set up camp. If you're in a motorhome, you don't want to unhook everything, drive the vehicle over to where the propane is to fill up and come back. So if you can have full propane at least starting, that'll help you out quite a bit.
Oh, yes.
Or there's other things. We have a video coming out this summer too on a what they have extend the stay adapter for your propane, where you can actually hook the portable propane tanks up to the line. You can see those in RV shops and stuff, but it allows you, if you're on a longer version, you can get the tanks that you can exchange out on there. But also test the systems in the living space that you're going to be dealing with for this time, whether you're boondocking or you're going to campsite. You want to make sure your fridge is working on electric propane if you have both. The sinks, your plumbing, you don't want any leaks or anything. What I do sometimes is after I've cleaned the lines out for the season, I'll put water in the tank, in the fresh water tank, and turn the pump on, cut all the faucets, and if you're starting to hear it kick on, it should only really be kicking on when you actually turn the faucet on. If it's kicking on, it's losing pressure somewhere. Now, it might be pressure at the actual pump. That happens from time to time. But at least it's letting you know that, hey, there's pressure from somewhere, whether it's the pipes or something else.
Yeah.
Make sure all your electrical's there, your AC, all that type of stuff. AC is a little difficult to test unless you've got a 30 or 50 amp at the house. It can come on a 15, 20 amp breaker like you normally plug into. It's not recommended because it pulls a lot of electric into your AC. And if it does come on, it will come on typically very rough on that. So check all that stuff before you hit the road. You don't want to be at a campsite or out in the woods because you're boondocking. and have systems fail on you. So trip planning were some of the main things that you had in mind when we were deciding our route for this 2 months.
One of the things that, excuse me, one of the things that I was concerned about was the duration that we were going to be on the road. I love to drive, and given the opportunity, I will push the envelope to, far reaches of the earth. But knowing that we have 2 pups that don't like to be in their crate any longer than they have to be, it's not fair to them. So one of the things that I took into consideration was drive. So I plotted out roughly about 8 hours, about 8 to 9 hours on our drive time. Mm-hmm. So from point A to our next point was, 8 to 9 hours. Our next point was 8 to 9 hours, 8 to 9 hours. And it seemed to work out really, really well. Once we got done with Florida and we started making our way, I noticed that we had extra time before when we got to Oklahoma. Mm-hmm. So it's like, oh, well, let's make it a couple of days extra so that we don't have to, pack and go.
And that 8 to 9 hours, that's us. We always add an hour or two because we're stopping with the pups. And that's because you've driven a lot.
Yeah.
And most RVs out there, if you aren't used to driving, most RVers talk about that sweet spot of about 4 to 6 hours, not pushing longer than 6. That's so that, one, you have a better chance of getting to wherever you're getting while they're still open, which we haven't quite figured out yet. And 2, you don't overdo it on your drive. So get used to what works for you. In most cases, this is a truck, whether you're a motorhome, it's a bus as a Class A, or really a truck chassis on a Class C. If you're pulling a travel trailer or a fifth wheel, which again, then you're basically driving a truck because you got a trailer that you're driving. Mm-hmm. So if you're not used to that, start off slower. Do 4 hours. Trips. Yeah, do 4-hour trips before stopping. And for some people, you may stay at that 4 to 6 because it's a journey, not necessarily a destination. In our case, there were certain things we were trying to get in. We're used to driving longer, so it isn't a big deal for us. But start off shorter distance and go. So we had a few places we wanted to go as well. 2 big things on this trip was Florida. Tampa was having its summer RV show. So we wanted to be down there for that. I wasn't able to get there for the big RV show in February timeframe this year. So we wanted to get down there for that. We wanted to spend some time in Florida. There's some places that we still haven't been to Florida.
Oh my goodness.
Such as the Keys. We wanted to go back to Orlando because I've got a lot of friends. We've actually got some mutual friends in Orlando. Mm-hmm. Spend some time there again. Then we wanted to get to Oklahoma for 4th of July because we have extended family. Not even extended. You have your sister's family there. In Oklahoma, you do have extended family too. But so we mapped out where do we need to stop to give the pups enough time and all that type of thing, because the pups are great. They're troopers when it comes to travel, but coming in the evening and leaving the next morning is a bit much for them. So we planned out our route. Now, there is in the RV community, some people or a lot of people like the mentality of let's just hit the road, nomad lifestyle, head in a direction, and when we get close to where we're going, we'll start looking for a campground then. Since I would caution a little bit about that, if you're fine with being able to, if there's nothing at this area, go another hour down the road to find stuff, you'll probably find a campsite. But since COVID, it's harder and harder to just show up to a campsite and they've got stuff.
Yeah, especially when everybody has office hours.
Yeah. Also, that's another good point. If you are doing that, you need to do the shorter trip so you're coming in during office hours. You can't just show up and find a place if it's after office hours. At that point, then you're going to be stopping at a Walmart or Cracker Barrel for the night if they still allow it. A lot more are not allowing it because of city ordinance.
Yeah. And then Loves is starting to have RV slots. And again, you have to plan for that because it's first come, first serve.
Yeah. And they do have, that's nice because you actually go from a kiosk and pay and everything. So it's whenever you come in. But this is a new thing with the Loves. There's got several, a lot more in the Midwest.
Yeah.
But for example, when we went down the furthest south was right at the Georgia border before Florida. There weren't any in Florida. On our trip going out, I think Missouri was the first one that would have had one for us going to Oklahoma. So they're spreading those, but they aren't everywhere.
Yeah, there's you have to look for the RV sites, and they're starting to pop up a little bit more.
Now the flip side is, if you've been following us, a couple episodes ago we talked about one of the sites that we went to that really wasn't what it advertised, so we moved on. So that's the downside of pre-planning, is you're doing everything on the web, looking at pictures, and you get there, you've already paid, you prepaid for your spot, so you've got a spot. But that's probably one where when we got there were several nicer ones for what we were looking for pet friendly.
Yeah.
You know, we're not necessarily looking for full resort, but there were some that were better pet friendly, but we didn't know they were there until we got there. So that's the plus side of being able to just show up and find something, because you can see firsthand. But you got to have backup if that's the case. Either that you're going to go further down the road, and that you show up early on there.
Yeah.
We already talked about planning in time for the pups. When you're on the road with pups, just like with kids, they need more bathroom breaks and everything than you do typically. So, so one of the things that you alluded to earlier was packing up and only taking what you need, but making sure you have what you need. So with that, one of the things that I look at is all the under the RV compartment stuff. Haven't figured out by yet. I mean, we partner pretty well, but I do more of the outside, underneath utility stuff. You do more of in the living space type stuff to make sure things are set up right. And you'll find that if you're a couple, you'll find that y'all will work out for yourselves who's doing what. You know, sometimes it requires both of you, like parking, but then once you're setting up the campsite, it'll break up that way. So one of the things I look at is what supplies for hookup and campsite do I need? If it's summertime, I'm not bringing the heated hose because that's just extra space. In the winter, if I bring the heated hose, it can work even if it's not cold as a regular hose. So I don't bring my normal hose. So it depends on what you're doing
and where you're at.
I got a nice one during this trip that's more of a collapsible as opposed to just the regular no king, so it uses up less space for the fresh water. Finding out ahead of time if the places you're staying, that's one good thing about planning your route. If the place you're staying allows for fencing, most of them do. We ran across 2 during these 2 months that did not allow.
Yeah.
And that's out of about 5 or 6 parks that we stopped at during our trip. So,
well, the good thing is that we had dog parks.
Yeah. In most of them. Yeah. So if we're going on a shorter trip or we're going places where we know right up ahead of time, we check that they don't allow the fencing, then I wouldn't bring it along because that takes up some space.
Yeah.
But if we can go a place and has it, it's very nice to have it because you can sit out with your dog and not have on leash. There are alternatives to fencing and leash. You got your tie out if you're out there with them, stuff like that. We found it doesn't work well when you have multiple dogs because they won't play with each other. They get tangled up and all that type of stuff. So especially when you have a hyper dog like Jackson, who's always out and about. So, and then if you can do research, you got the proper canopy. This trip, we went places that were more windy, so we need a sturdier canopy. Yeah, so we ended up going out and getting another one, but that meant that until we got back home, we had our normal canopy taking up space. We weren't throwing it out; it works good, but we wanted to make sure we had that. When we got to the Keys, as windy as that was, we saw most people had what we call these event canopies that are like the
event canopy styles, yeah.
The actual like poles you have for like a vendor at some place with the canvas over it and everything because it's so windy. And if you're wondering how windy it is, we just released on Saturday a short video you can find here. I'll put a link in the description of what happened with someone's awning, unfortunately, while we were in the Keys.
Yeah.
So another reason you don't keep your canopy out on there. So
yeah, they tell you that the awnings are designed more for shade,
for sun, yeah.
you know, give you that shade factor versus rain or anything
Yeah.
like that.
Some of your older ones were designed to take some of the water because of the way the slant is. Even your newer ones has a little bit of a slant typically, but they're not designed for that, especially not designed for wind on there. Another thing to think about when you're packing is food. Are you going to pack up food on your trip? Or are you going to buy stuff when you get there? But also, if you're gone for a long time and you aren't living full time, but you're coming from a home like we are, see how long you're going to be gone and check the food in your pantry and fridge.
Expiration date, yes.
Expiration dates, because if it's going to expire before you get back, you might as well take it with you if you know you're going to eat it, or get rid of it so you're not waiting for a science experiment when you get home. So
we got rid of almost our refrigerator was pretty bare.
Yeah.
And I did go through and did check some of the pantry and switched it over to the RV.
Some of the stuff we were going to have, like some of the soups and fruit and stuff like that, that were going to expire while we're gone, we brought with the RV. We knew we would have it on the road.
Yeah.
I think. Also think about how you're going to keep your refrigerator cool during travel if you are going to have stuff in the fridge during the travel. It's not a lot of controversy on this, on whether you should have propane going or not when you're driving. If you have a propane fridge, it's not illegal, but most RV techs I've talked to have said that it's not illegal, but they wouldn't do it because they've seen results. If something does happen, you got propane going. I know a lot of people will jump on here and say, you know, I've done it for 20 years and never had a problem. That's great. I know people who had their house for 20 years and never had lightning strike either. You know, we got home, and by the way, the reason I say that is we got home and lightning struck. That's why our power's out. We had lightning strike, but that's why you have insurance for. But so decide what you're doing. If you plug it in the night before, get it cool. Normally what we do is we'll keep it plugged in all the way up until I unplug electric. I put a bag of ice in there. And if it's cool to start with and you have a bag of ice in there, it will stay at temperature for a good 8-9 hours on there.
One of the reasons why we have our refrigerator going is that I'm a diabetic and I'm on insulin. So I have to make sure that I have my insulin taken care of. Yeah. So so
we have to keep it cool, but we do look at, I don't keep propane on when we're driving. That's our choice. And so that's what we do that way. I get it to temperature the night before, make sure it's nice and cold, and then we put ice in there before we hit the road. We do that. Now you're mentioning clothes. We found that there's a lot of clothes that we brought that we never even used.
Yeah.
And took up space. And it's not just you, I did as well, you know, type thing. You got limited storage. The other thing though is you got to think about, what do you need? Are you going to be going places where you'll be going out? You need some dressier clothes, and of course you're going to bring that along. Yeah, because you could do that. A lot of things are great that are multi-purpose. You know, a shirt that can be casual, but if it's not dressy but a little upscale, you know, it's buttons, stuff like that. You know, you can do. So I don't need like 5 different shirts because we might do 5 different things during the day. You know, type thing. But you do have small storage, and we do have, which is another thing we need to record shortly. We have containers that will fit in some of the overhead better, to make better use. Yeah. So we don't have a dresser in our Class C, but we kind of made one. We've got a couple really small closet. By closet, I mean smaller than this chair in width, and overhead. Overhead, if you're just putting stacked clothes, it doesn't work too well. So Danielle here, she found some nice containers, open top, that fit in there, and you can actually stack them too high. And that way, when you're getting your clothes, you just pull out the particular container. And we'll have video coming up on that.
And I found a really nice collapsible shoe rack that hangs and I use that as my drawers for my smaller clothing, for my
Mhm.
socks and bras and stuff like that, bathing suits,
Mhm.
and it works really, really well. I also, because it slides back and forth, I will put my shoes in there to kind of help it slide, and then that's also where I keep the pet records. That's something
Mhm.
else that you need to take into consideration is your records for your pets.
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody else thought of this or think of this, but every time we travel, even if we just go down to Virginia Beach, I take the pet records with us just in case something happens,
Mhm.
because you just never know, and it's better to have them than granted. We only go to one vet location, but we've had to go to a couple of different ones
Mhm.
for Maggie, because Maggie's our problem child.
We've had some emergency vet visits, so
So-
it's important to have.
Yeah, so so I make sure that I have all the records so that if we have to take them somewhere out of
Mhm.
state, that we've got all their vaccination records. They can see when they were last vaccinated. They had all their procedures, everything. So we have everything.
And I know storage space is limited, but it doesn't mean that you can't bring some extras. Always bring something that's entertainment items, whether it's cornhole or stuff to play, or pool items. We brought blow up stuff for pool and stuff like that too, because you are out there to have fun, to enjoy. Even if you're working from the road like I was, we took time at all the spots to enjoy where we're going. I mean, why travel if you aren't going to enjoy where you're at
Mhm.
on there? So, also, if you know you're going to have visitors on the road, you need to pre-plan for that. What do you need for space, as far as sleeping space, other items, stuff like that? We had one of the reasons we were going to Oklahoma too was right after that. We were going up to Kansas to visit our daughter and her family, her husband and our grandbabies, and they were going to camp with us for a little while we were up there. So we need to make sure we had prepared for when they're coming, because that's additional space. So you need to make sure you have that on there, however you want to adjust that.
And it kind of didn't work out the way we intended, but we bought a bike storage
Mhm.
to house the bikes in, so that the bikes weren't left out in the
Yeah.
in the weather. And we ended up couldn't find the intended items that we were looking for. We need to do a video on
Yeah.
on
we
size.
We'll do a
But,
video on.
But we ended up using our bike storage as our storage for all the stuff that was in the overhead. So that kind of like worked out really, really well. Matter of fact, we have to get a second one so that we actually have a place to put the bikes.
Mhm.
So we have one for the storage in case we need it, and then one for the
Yeah.
bikes.
And we'll do one with the accessories and stuff like that. I believe coming up here in the next month or so, Amazon's doing their not their Prime Day, but they do a Amazon Prime big deal day or something where they have more discounts. The reason I bring that up is the bike storage that we have is a portable one I got off Amazon. So we'll put, matter of fact, I'll put a link down here later of where that is. But basically, it's a canvas waterproof setup to put a couple bikes in, since we were bringing bikes on the road this time. We didn't want to get, rained on, stuff like that. So we did that. And with that, when we came to visit, there was stuff we had in overhead we needed to use. So we put out there in the waterproof stuff we weren't going to get into during that stop. And we also picked up some collapsible crates to put the stuff in from Shields. If you haven't been to Shields, we're on the East Coast, so we don't have it here. They are online. But think of other like sporting goods stores on steroids.
Evil.
Everything you can look for. And they aren't sponsoring us, obviously, since she's mouthing off Eva here. She's being sarcastic here. The reason why she's saying that is because you walk in there, you will find something to buy.
They
have so much great
they have
stuff.
everything. Not only do they got sporting goods, they got your clothing areas. They even have a duck pin bowling, two lane.
Yeah. Hunting, camping,
and they also
boating.
have home decor,
Yeah.
some furniture. So I mean, they literally have
Workout stuff, everything.
everything.
It was our first time going in there, and
They even have a sweet shop.
it it's an experience.
Yeah.
And they are not sponsoring this. We don't have a sponsor for our video, but we're just so blown away from it. So if you're listening, we will accept sponsorships. But we're not right now. But it just they were really an experience. Also, if you leave some space in your packing for souvenirs, because you're traveling around, you're going to find stuff at the different places you're going to, and just like a vacation, you're going to want to bring stuff back. So make sure that you have somewhere to put stuff. Don't be so packed to the brim that you're busting out of the seams when you first leave out on your trip.
Yeah.
You want to make sure you have space for
And of
that
course,
or other items.
I like to buy stuff for the grandbaby. So
Well, we got that. We also got souvenirs we found, and we have but you brought me along. We have a hobby of doing these sip and paints.
oh yeah.
And so we got paintings from where we did. You see a couple of them behind us. We had in the last video as well. And we got a box of your paintings behind her seat there. So make sure you have space for that stuff. Also, if you have a brick and mortar home, you aren't living full time, but you're taking a long trip, there's certain things you want to take into consideration with your house itself. So one of the things is the environment of the house, HVAC, stuff like that, where you're setting the thermostats. The good thing is we got smart thermostats, so I can always go off the phone here and adjust things if I need to. I also have the security system on my phone too, so I can see if someone's come up, ring doorbell, for example, stuff like that, if I need to. But we talk about bringing the pups. We have a couple cats at home too. We don't have the space. You might
I don't know if you
hear them.
I can say I don't know if you can hear them or not, but they're
The door.
they're
Yeah.
outside the door.
So with that, we don't have the space to bring all of the cats and our pups and everyone else. Also, since we sometimes sit out with the pups when we have the fence up to come in and out, with the cats. Those of you that do travel with cats, more power to you. We love our cats. We're not there yet. I'm at the point I'm concerned that they would get out and get lost.
Yeah.
Right now. But we do bring our pups because one of our pups is a rescue and does have abandonment issues. So we basically don't leave her at home. So with that, if we're going to be gone for any period of time, we need to make sure the pets are taken care of.
Yeah.
So you really researched that and found a solution for that.
I have we have one of our neighbors, and actually her daughter she's a joy. She really is. Her and Indy chase each other around the house and everything. They really enjoy each other. Her daughter is looking to be getting into some kind of animal career thing, whether it be a vet technician, anything related to animals. So she's learning at this early age, and she's kind of a cat whisperer.
Yeah.
Indy will go to anybody. Indy's very, very friendly. She's slowly working on Rocky and Alley Girl, but I would think that after 2 months that they probably eventually do come to her. But one of the things that you want to do is you want to make sure that you have a complete understanding with your pet sitter what your expectations are, where everything is going to be located, because they need to know where the litter is. They need to know where the food is. They need to know not only where you store them, but where they are in the house. So you want to make sure that you both are on the same pages. It took a little while, but I finally found a good pet sitter. We had some issues with the first one, and then this one is much, much better. So we're all on the same page. So that's a big thing, is your pets are part of your family. Anyone that's a pet owner, I'm not saying anything amazing secret, type thing. But so you want to make sure that you're comfortable with whoever is going to be sitting them if you do have sitting. And remember, these people are coming in your house.
Yes, they're coming in your house, but also they're taking care of your family members. But also, one thing that we found, because we tried when we've been gone a day or two, we have had people sit for our pups as well. That was a bit more difficult.
Yeah.
But one thing I would say, especially with dogs, somewhat with cats too, is we like to have them come over, whoever's house sitting, a few times in the couple weeks leading up to socialize and get used to the pets.
Yeah.
More so that the pets have gotten socialized with them.
At least they have get a familiar,
Yeah.
you know, with who's here. Because Maggie is she's very territorial because she is a rescue. She knows that this is her home, and so she's going to protect it.
Mm-hmm.
She's going to protect it.
So we have to introduce people to her and stuff like that. But even with the cats will skitter, and hide when someone comes in, most of them. And he will run up and say, "Who's this?" But I feel more comfortable with the person because that way you can also do what you were talking about as far as the making sure expectations, where stuff's at, schedule, stuff like that. Like I said, my security system, I actually have a coded system for the door, so I can assign the person a specific pin
Mm-hmm.
to get in and out. I don't have to get keys out and stuff like that.
That's another good thing too.
Yeah. So we make sure stuff is set for that. Also, like I said, the environment, because I can't just turn everything off on the HVAC because the cats are here, but I can adjust things. Also, stuff will spoil while you're away. We already mentioned about checking the pantries and stuff like that. If it's not something you're going to eat on the road while you're camping, get rid of it so you don't have it when you come back if it's already expired by the time you come back.
or
Will be expired while you're gone. Another thing is mail. We had a house, since we had the pet sitter come in, they were bringing the mail in and putting it in a separate place. That's fine. If you're going to be gone for a long period, you may want to do other things, such as go to the post office and stop mail.
Yeah.
We had a package show up that needed a signature, but no one told us they were shipping something, so
Yeah,
I had
that
to
was
deal with
that was
afterwards.
fun.
And I've seen for full timers, there are mail services and stuff like that where you can have your mail sent, but that's if you're going to be doing something full time, because you got to do a change of address to that. And then depending on what the service is, you can find them online here. Some will forward to you, some will do scan in and send to you, that type of stuff. We didn't do it that because we were going to be gone for a couple months, and we had someone coming in for the pets.
Yeah.
So they were able to bring the mail in.
And some of the locations that we referenced before was they were pretty good about receiving our packages and stuff like that. Definitely, you want to make sure about that because one of the locations was $5.
Yeah, everything was $5.
$5.
You wanted someone to come on, they can get a parking pass to visit your site for $5. You want to receive Amazon packages or mail, it was $5. So a lot of places there is no charge. Some places aren't set up for receiving for transient visits like us, type thing.
And plus, we also had a couple of friends that were willing to help us out and let us use their mail address.
When we got on the road and found out that we needed stuff that we didn't realize we were going to on this long trip, Amazon's great. We could find Amazon, and a lot of places could deliver. But yeah, the good thing is we found out about stuff while we were early in the trip in Florida, and we have friends in Tampa and Orlando, so we could time where stuff's going to be and get stuff out there as well. So that's some of the pre-plannings that brought you all the way up to day of travel. So what we do when we're ready to travel. So you're from your home, you're getting ready to head out. So what we're going to look at is we've got everything packed inside. Vehicle's been checked over. You've got your pets in and secured. I know people have their dogs run around inside. That's you, if that's what you want to do. We secure our pets while we're traveling with their crate. I also have, when we travel in the car, I have a connector from the seatbelt to their harness, type thing. Just because in an accident, they can get injured from moving around quite a bit too. Just like I don't walk around unless I actually have to get something. I'll make my way back to the fridge or pantry if I have to do that and come back up. And I do realize if I'm doing that, it's an unsafe aspect. I get back to the seat, so I don't put the pups in that. If you do, that's you do you, type thing. But you make sure everyone's in set. I keep plugged in because I have a RV plug at our house, so I keep plugged in so everything's powered and stuff until we're ready to go. So then I'll unhook that utility, get it stowed. If we had things leveled and slides out or anything while we were packing up, getting everything situated, we'll bring all that in, just like any travel day. At least put the GPS up to your first campsite that you're going to. It's much easier before you head out to make sure everything's set and ready to go. We have a Garmin GPS that's specifically for RV, where we programmed in the height and length of our vehicle, and it takes that into account when we do our mapping. Put that on previous videos when I've done our Amazon day, but I'll put that down here this week as well once we update.
It's kind of funny because it puts you on a specific route to make sure that you and your RV are traveling safe and not hitting any of the barriers like the low bridges and things of that nature,
or some of those sharp hairpin.
And it's kind of funny because there have been a few times where we've been out and about, especially in Tennessee and Arkansas, that this is the RV route.
Yeah, this is the RV preferred route. Especially up in the mountains and stuff.
Yeah, some of those were. It's like I was kind of glad that we made a few of those during the day, because I couldn't imagine trying to drive some of those hairpin turns at night. They were some of them were really sharp, and when you're on the outside where the mountains on the left side and the drop off is on the right, but you're having to take that real sharp turn, and it's like, wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've had some interesting navigation when we're driving, and that's with the proper GPS. I could imagine where stuff would take us without,
And we've actually kind of done both just to kind of see what the difference is. And because we'll put the GPS on our phone and then we'll put the GPS on Garmin. Obviously, we're going to follow the RV one, because that's the one that will make sure that we're not hitting any low bridges or anything like that. And for the most part, I would say 9 times out of 10, they're pretty
close. Within an hour. And keep in mind, we're doing 8-hour trip. So they're normally closer to within 30 minutes.
Yeah.
But the most I've seen them be a difference is an hour.
And pretty much the route is fairly the same.
Close. There's some where, it's taking us a different route.
So,
another thing to keep in mind if you're traveling with pets or other people further back. We've traveled with the grandbabies before, and they were in the car seat and in the dining has hookup, type thing. Is how you keep that space cool. One thing we learned driving a motorhome is, at least a Class C, is the cab part when you're driving is where all the air and all that is. The rest of the house isn't getting that. So depending on where you're traveling, we open the vents up so air is flowing from that. But how do you keep, especially with us, how do we keep our dogs cool? How do we keep the grandbabies if they're with us, like last year? Just a few options. What we found over time, at first I had battery operated, it wasn't like battery operated, it's USB rechargeable operated fans. But when it's warmer, like most of us travel, that's not enough. So and they run out of charge eventually. So we do a couple things. Typically I have the inverter on, because when you're driving in a motorhome, your engine and alternator is recharging the house battery, just like you're plugged into shore power. So I can use the inverter to power the rest of the plugs.
Most of them.
So if I have fans, they can be plugged in fans, so they're not going to run out of charge. It's not all of them. It is most. But or if it's really hot, one of the things we did do for a portion of the trip here, because there were some hot days, on the road here.
Oh yeah.
Is we did run the generator and run our AC. You can run your generator going down the road, and that will give you AC. The downside of that is it uses, in our case, gasoline. I know there's propane ones, but in our case, gasoline. So your engine's using your gas and your generator's using your gas. So you're running through fuel quicker in that case. But look at how you're going to keep the living space cool if anyone, your pets, people, whatever, are in that area, are in the cab park. I'm not sure how Class A's do it, if they have a better system, because it's more open from the cab back. I haven't driven a Class A yet, so we'll have to look into that. Also, I work from the road, so travel day is not just taking in the sights. So I have to typically work. That's why she drives most of the time, unless it's the weekend. I'm working, so internet is a big thing for me. I work remote, so we need to make sure we can get internet down the road. There's different internet options, but look at what works for you on the road, if that's a concern for you. In my case, I need internet that works while we're in motion. So for that, Starlink wouldn't be for me unless we got the higher option. I've looked into Starlink on their lower option. Will give you motion if you're going under 10 miles an hour, so like you move from like one side to the other. Above that, you've got to pay for their higher system. What we have is cellular base, and it works on all three cellular systems out there, carriers. So it works where we're down the road. Now I might drop and reconnect as it's going from one tower to another, so it's not perfect. But we also have a cellular booster antenna outside that brings the signal inside as well. So for the most part, it's worked out well for us when we've traveled. So I don't have to take as many leave days just because we're on the road. So that's always good. Also, then hooking up the tow vehicle, we've got that down to a science now. Now that we've got it down, we're going to record it again so that you can see how you do it. I do have a video on our site on how to put our vehicle, which is a Jeep Cherokee, how to put that in tow mode once you're hooked up. It's a quick short on here if you're interested on how do you flat tow a vehicle. I've got a number of videos on our site here about towing, both flat tow, dolly, as well as flatbed on there. So we hook up, get everything situated for that, and then hit the road. Be aware, even though you have it programmed in the GPS, know what the height and length of your vehicle is, and also you want to know the length, including your tow vehicle, while you're on the road, because as you mentioned, there's some of these turns. It's not just you; it's you and your tow vehicle if you're towing. On there. And also a big thing that's hit us a lot is we always plan so that we'll be there during hours, but traffic happens, accidents, weather, and a lot of times we've ended up getting pushed back after hours. So if GPS is going to get us while we're on a trip, if GPS updates and says now you're coming in after the time that the campground closes, I'll call the campground. I know most places have after hours, but I'll call and let them know, hey, we're still coming in today, but now GPS has coming after hours. What do I need to do? Because some places have different ways of handling after hours. Most of them have like a little envelope in the bigger parks. You mentioned that one park we went to where it was a small park. We didn't know it was small, but they said, okay, we'll put a trash bag over the power pedestal so you know which one's yours. It was kind of interesting because before we got there, we're like, okay, how are we going to find one little pedestal in this whole big park? Well, it wasn't a big park. That's why on there.
But it's a nice place.
But that also helps because a few of them, about 4 of the campgrounds we stopped at, I booked through a third-party network. And they're just a booking site. They aren't the individual campsites. And 2 of them that were coming in after hours, I called to let them know they were coming in after hours, and they had no record that we were coming in. So it worked out because they were able to put us in, and I'll talk to that booking site later, but If we came in after hours and the actual campground didn't get the memo that we were coming in, we'd be in a very difficult situation.
Yeah.
Because again, after hours, there's no one at the office. So if you know you're coming to a specific campground and you're going to be coming in after hours, don't just take for account that it's already going to be set up for you. Give them a call. Often the offices, if you've gone camping before, you know these offices are short staffed or small staff, so you probably get answering machine and they'll call you back or something like that. But let them know, hey, I'm coming in after hours when it's expected. Because we had some where we're coming in an hour later, but the place is on site. They're like, oh, well, in that case, just ring the bell or my phone number is on the door. Call me when you get there. We'll get you set. But then a lot of them are like, yeah, okay, well, when you show up, this bulletin board or this mailbox is where we put the after hours ones.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes it easier when you show up, especially if you show up long enough later where it's dark.
Yeah.
It makes it much easier on you. So that's a big tip that we have for here. And then have a plan on how you're going to set up your campsite when you get there. We've worked out over time who does what when we come in. But you want to have that. Our particular plan is, first thing is it pull through? Is it back in? How are we going to park it? Lining up the site. That takes both of us to get it in the right position so that you're far enough up where your slides aren't going to have any problem with trees or the power pedestal or any of that. But also, you aren't so far away from your utilities that my hoses and
you're stretched out.
Everything doesn't stretch there.
Yeah.
Then the first thing I do is hook up power, because remember, we've been going down the road without regular power. So the sooner I can hook up power, the sooner I can get regular AC and everything else for the pups. Then I'll do water and waste. The reason I do those is because all my equipment for that is under where the slide comes out. So I'll get all that stuff out while I can still access without crawling under the vehicle on that. Then we'll level and put our slides. Always level first. Those slides are very sensitive. It's very easy. If they're off canter, you can mess up your slide and make it more difficult to have it come in and out. So I always level, put the slide out. I might, depending on where we're at, re-level after I have the slide. I always level first.
Yeah, we were at one site where we had to re-level like 3 or 4 times.
Yeah.
And actually kind of adjust the RV a little bit because we just couldn't get that level.
Yeah. And then while I'm doing the outside, you'll typically do the window cover out front. We have a thick cover on the outside of the window that's for weather like snow and everything. That works very well on keeping light out. That way we don't have to have a curtain at the back of the cab so that you lose out on those seats. We turn our seats around and that's extra seating while we're there. So we use the cab of the vehicle as well for seating and everything. So we had that on the outside window. Now in this trip, if we're in very hot place, I have the Reflexix that's cut out as well on the inside. That makes a difference, even with the outside cover, so it gets hot.
Yeah, we found out just by putting it inside the cab that actually made a really
Reduce
huge
the temperature a bit. Yeah,
huge difference.
And while I'm finishing the utilities outside, you'll put the stool steps out as you come out the step and start getting the inside situated. Everything's been stowed that has to come out, so we'll be doing that. Then we have and I'll continue to work on the outside of the campsite. So if we have the ability to do fences, I'll put the fence up. We'll put the mats out, chairs, tables, the canopy, water bowl for the pups because they'll be out there with us.
Yeah.
But getting our whole thing set up. In our case, I don't put my grill and fire pit out initially, typically, unless I know we're going to be hitting it right away. But I do make sure after everything's out that that's right at the entrance to the basement. So if we do grill or something, I can pull it out right away. Just in our case, because the amount of space that we're fencing off, I'm more concerned about having more space for the pups to run than having everything in the campsite. But however you want to set up, you need to make sure that you do that. And that's where we kind of have split up our duties. She's more getting the inside situated because everything's packed up inside,
Mhm.
and I'm setting the outside up like that. So for those of you that stay to the end, thank you so much. We do have our bonus tip here, is how we break down for going from one campsite to the other. And what we found is, because it's our living space when we're at a campsite, is what's helped us is we break down everything outside the night before. It kind of feels like that Sunday night before work the next day, though, because you're like, I just want to stay out and enjoy and everything a bit more. But by doing that, if we break everything down except for the steps and the utility hookup, then the next day when we're trying to pack up and get on the road by a certain time, it's much easier. We can put the steps away, unhook the utility while you're stowing the stuff inside, bring these slides in, get everything in GPS, and then we're unhooked, levelers are up, and hook the vehicle up and go.
I think that we've actually been able to leave at least 30 minutes quicker.
I would say about an hour.
Anywhere
From a half hour to an hour.
Yeah, because it's really made a huge difference doing that.
Yeah.
So,
and it's always when you're setting up camp or when you're tearing down, you have a lot of things happening. There's stuff you don't want to forget, which is why camping etiquette says don't, bother someone when they're setting up camp or when they're tearing down, because they will want to skip something.
Yeah.
I also suggest you have checklists when you're first starting out until this is routine. But by doing a lot of it the day before, there's less stuff at least for me, there's less stuff I have to think about on day of trying to get on the road. Because we also have to walk the pups, feed them, all this type of stuff.
Well, not only that, it also depends on your meeting schedule too.
Because I work on days if it's not a weekend, I'm still working.
There's been a few times where we have to at least be on the road by 9 o'clock because you have a 9 o'clock meeting.
Yeah.
So that plays a lot into how soon we can get out.
So those are a lot of things that go into planning a long trip. Also, something you need to plan is budget, and we will be talking about that in our next episode. We're starting to do. We found that these work probably every 2 weeks instead of every week. Every week while we're actually camping on the road is good because there's plenty of stuff at the new campsite, But when we're not on the road, we're going to be doing these every couple weeks. So not next Sunday, but the following Sunday will be our next episode. And we're going to talk about... Is that... out?
I might be out.
Okay. But we'll update. We're going to try to keep every 2 to 3 weeks. So we're going to have schedule. We will put out on our Facebook and YouTube. If it's not 2 weeks from now, we'll put that out on there. But we've gathered all the stuff that we spent in this 2-month trip, which, spoiler alert, it was more than we anticipated. But we're also going to talk about, what for us for 2 months, what cost was in different areas, how much it cost overall, and things to consider money-wise when you're traveling. So with that, like I said, it's more than you anticipate because we're traveling. I was traveling, working on the road, but we were also vacationing some in these different places. And as you're aware, vacation travel is more expensive than other travel.
Yeah.
And so, we splurged a couple places, but then there's other stuff that we didn't realize was going to be an expense while we were on the road.
And then we had emergencies as well. So there was, that's a lot of things to consider.
So tune in for our next episode. Currently planned for 2 weeks from now. If we adjust, we'll let you know. But we'll go into budgets and what to consider monetary wise for a long trip.
Yeah.
So with that, I'm Brian.
I'm Daniela.
And for Jackson and Maggie, happy camping with the pups.